I woke up one morning and I had 6 numbers in my head, and I couldn't get them out of my head. I couldn't go back to sleep. And so I'm like, okay, there's 6 numbers. What the heck is this? I had actually never played the lottery before. So I woke up my husband, who's snoring beside me, and I asked, honey, how many numbers are in the lottery? And he said 6. I'm like, okay, I've got 6 numbers. And I said, I think I may have the lottery number. I have never seen him move so fast before.
My name is Paul Harvey, and this is Life, Passion and Business. We're about helping you explore, finding your passion for life and the work that you do. But it's so much more than that. It's about finding clues to the big life questions. What does it mean to be successful? What is the meaning of life? If you're looking for more, then join me on this journey where together we will discover through interviews, tools and tips how to live life full of meaning, passion and purpose. Welcome to episode 52. My guest on today's show kind of arrived. Yes, this program is about intuition. Now, we all have access to it and experience it at different stages of life, and I know a few people that dance through their life making important decisions based on stuff that's completely intangible. I first heard Lynn Robinson speak on the Flywheel podcast way back last year. That is a show hosted by one of our early guests, Victor Jimenez. While at the gym last November, it flashed back up on my podcast app, so I listened to it again. Now, without getting too woo-woo, I realised that I wanted her on the show because I noticed that over the last few months, my life is very much in the flow. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it's not huge, but things seem to happen when they need to and for the right reason. I'm inspired to do things when the time is right. It's so hard to put this sort of stuff into words, but it's almost impossible to do so. But it's just a feeling that guides me to the right action. So I reached out to Lynn, and she said yes. Lynn is internationally known for her intuitive advice and counsel. She's a widely recognised author, motivational speaker. She works with businesses and individuals as their intuitive advisor, and she offers insights into bold decisions and into strategies. And she does this in a way that where both parties feel their way forward towards the answer. Now, she must be good, because this lady's been doing this for 30 years and it's a long way from customer service management. In our program, we talk about her experience with intuition and how it guided her life. We talk about some of the strangest stories, and we also talk about those 6 lottery numbers. We talk about her success models, developing intuition and the meaning of life. If you ever wanted to be more in tune with whatever it is that supports these big life decisions, or even the small decisions, then this podcast is for you. I think you may be surprised at what is possible. Before we get to the interview, there is a free offer at the end of this podcast, so make sure you check it out before you leave. I hope you enjoy the conversation with Lynn Robinson. So welcome to Life, Passion and Business, and I'm delighted today to be here with Lynn Robinson. Now, like a lot of my connections, I meet my connections online or for various things, but Lynn is different. I heard Lynn speaking on a podcast some months ago, and I was really inspired by the conversation at the time. And it was a few weeks back, I went back to that conversation just by fluke, because it was with a previous podcast guest, that's Victor Jimenez on the Flywheel podcast. And it was just an inspiration to reach out and listen to this podcast again. And I thought, I must get Lynn on the program. And you'll see why this idea of it kind of popping to my head is important. So Lynn, welcome to the podcast.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me, Paul.
and I've kept it secret what you do. So just tell my listeners what you do, because this is why it's so important that you popping into my head was
Oh,
fortuitous.
yes. Well, you know, I have one of those occupations. I sometimes wish I was an accountant, so you could just easily describe what you do. People understood it. But I am an intuitive advisor. So what does that mean? I always have to explain it. So people call me when they're in the midst of change and transition and trying to figure out next steps. And I use my intuition and help them use theirs to figure out what those next steps might be. Because I think of intuition as sort of like our inner compass, and it points us in the right direction.
Yes, I fully agree with you. And I recognize it's one of those subjects that people don't want to talk about.
Yes, and it's kind
And
of
yet,
hard to talk about.
so many people do it.
Yes, I know. One of the reasons I've written, well, actually written 7 books on intuition, but one of the reasons I did that was because I find that there's a lot of books out there that say, oh, trust your gut, or what do your instincts say? And just like what you said, it's like people don't really know how to do it, or what does that mean? I mean, it sounds so easy to trust your gut, but how does that feel and look like? And, how do you do it? So I'm a real
Well,
practical sort, despite being right-brained.
I have an interesting story for you today.
Oh, God, I can't wait.
I was talking to a friend yesterday, and I've got loads of intuition stories, but this was interesting yesterday. A friend of mine is building a house, and he called the water people in to tell him where the pipes were so he could put a new water connection in. And this old guy got out the van and said, okay, yeah. And he said, so where's the water pipe? I said, I don't know. He said, hold on a minute. And the guy got some dowsing rods out of his pocket and dowsed for the water pipe.
No, I love that. Oh my
And
gosh.
that was like 3 weeks ago. He dowsed for the water. And he's like, if you'd have told anyone that the water board uses a dowser to find their water
Wow.
pipes,
That's amazing.
they wouldn't put it on the job description.
No, I'm sure. That's brilliant. I love that. That's a great story.
Yeah, it just reminded me. So anyway, Lynn, obviously you use your intuition. So was it always like, I mean, clearly you are very skilled at this because it's something you've made a living out of it. So was it always that way?
It kind of was. And I didn't really understand that the way I used it was so unusual in the beginning. I kind of thought everybody else got these intuitive impressions. And I do, by the way, think we're all intuitive, but I do think that there's some of us who perhaps have a greater gift in it or have worked at developing it. So it does seem to be a bit hereditary. Interestingly, I'd been doing intuitive readings for about 7 years. And my long lost grandfather, who, long story, but the short version is that he kind of had abandoned the family when my mother was young. And he got him back in touch with her, and through a series of correspondence confessed that after being a detective in wartime London, he had been a psychic and a healer. So I just was totally amazed because there was never really any direct family influence. I didn't grow up religious, or we didn't have a lot of woo-woo stuff in my home, or even dowsing. And so the fact that my grandfather was a psychic, practicing psychic, was pretty astounding to me. Yeah.
So obviously, what got you into this? How did you start? How did you get to here then? What was the process for you?
Yeah, I was always fascinated by it. I mean, the fascination really more started out with a more of a spiritual kind of interest, like, how do we receive guidance, and are there angels, and kind of woo-woo stuff like that. And then I took some classes on intuition development and found that I was really good at it. We had like these partner exercises where I was giving people, impressions that I got, and people kept saying, oh my gosh, how do you know that? You're spot on. And I was like, I am. And so it was pretty interesting to me how it unfolded. And at the time, believe it or not, I was the operations manager of a software company in Boston.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you,
yes.
actually. What was the day job?
I know. Yeah, I know. You don't usually make a living at this, but yeah, so that was my day job. And so I was in hiding for a long time. Like, I wanted to keep my regular job and my benefits and all that. But I got to that point where I couldn't do it anymore. I just got so bored with what I was doing, and it seemed to so lack meaning. And then I finally decided that I would go out on my own, and I just always had wanted to have my own business. And so I don't know. I after taking a bunch of kind of classes, I just said, well, the only one stopping me from doing this is me. And I just figured, well, I could either succeed or fail. And I was at the point young enough and didn't have a lot of, overheads in my life that I just said, I'm just going to try this. And that was 30 years ago. So I guess it worked.
So you're living an intuitive life for 30 years.
Yeah, and I've really been very, very grateful that I did that. It was very interesting story though how this happened because I think what you've talked about in your podcast before, I felt pretty lost there for a while and just knew that I didn't want to work for software companies and I hadn't found my path. And I went to a career counselor during that time and it was interesting. One part of it that was interesting was that I ended up scoring high on a number of different aptitudes and apparently that's very rare. But I think for a lot of us creative types, it's not so uncommon. At least that's my observation anecdotally. And what does that mean on a practical level? Usually people score high on one thing, like, oh, yes, you should be a civil engineer. You should be an elementary school teacher. But those of us who have multiple aptitudes get bored really easily. So we're really good at being self-employed, or we're really good at doing, maybe having a main job and a consulting job on the side, or some hobbies or volunteer work, or some combination of things to keep our interest. And that definitely ended up being me. That described me. So I'm glad that I followed that instinct to become self-employed.
So is this would you just determine it as a passion for you, this role?
It absolutely is. I mean, I love encouraging people. I love, seeing, kind of looking in their souls and seeing what might be blocking them or, what their aptitudes are, what their skill sets are. Paul, what I find happens to a lot of us is that we kind of know what we're excited about, or, I mean, if you want to put it in more new agey terms, our life passion or life mission, life calling. I think a lot of us do know that, but we talk ourselves out of it. I mean, I certainly could have done that in the early stages of, oh my gosh, how could I make a living at this? And I shouldn't leave my real job. And, no one will ever hire me. And I did do that for a while. I talked myself out of it for quite a long time. And yet I find that's my observation. I see a lot of people doing that. Oh, I'm not good enough, or I need to have more education, or so-and-so is better than me, or I don't know how to do it. And we kind of talk ourselves out of that initial, gut feeling, I guess, to say, go try this or do this.
And so, I mean, intuition, we've touched on it a little bit. I mean, it's kind of that gut feeling, that sense of something is right or something's wrong.
Right. Yeah. And, people get it in lots of different ways, and there's no one way that's the right way. So yes, you might get a gut feeling, a physical sensation of some sort. You might have a feeling, an emotional feeling. You might have a dream about something. A symbolic picture could come into your mind to say, that's the right direction or not. A very simple way to think about it if you're just starting out is, if you're feeling drained, bored, enervated by something, that's your intuition saying that a change is needed. And so I tell people to do, start paying attention to what excites you. Sometimes excitement is a little bit too strong of a word for people. I don't get excited about a lot, but pay attention to what you're curious about, what energizes you, what's right on the horizon, perhaps that you're looking forward to, and take some steps towards it. Because often it doesn't come in this big booming voice, Paul, here's what you're meant to do. I mean, if I were in charge of the universe, it would do that, but I am not in charge of the universe. Probably
no burning bushes then.
No. I know, probably scare me half to death and I go running in the other direction. Yes. But yeah, I find that those like little inner clues, and I tell people to just take small steps in the direction of what they're excited about, because I find that when you do that, intuition is not unlike your navigation system in your car. You say, here's where I want to go, and it will start giving you directions. And intuition does that in your life too. Like, what are you excited about? Well, send that email out, or take that class, or, call Paul Harvey and get on his podcast, or, write your blog, or whatever it is that's encouraging you. And what I find happens serendipitously is you run into the right people or the right situations, or you have an aha moment, or the next step presents itself. But it requires a little bit of faith and trust to live this intuitive life.
Yes, it does. And there are some people I know of people who, I guess if you press them, they would say, well, particularly one lady I'm thinking of, if you press her, she would say she lives entirely an intuitive life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hear her about her life, I mean, she doesn't. I've said to her before, you don't say much about it. She said, no, it just pisses people off. She's the one that will turn up to the airline and they say, "Oh, would you like to be upgraded?" Because she just is that
Yes.
sort of thing. She's the one
Yeah.
that things just get given to her
Yeah, I
because
know.
she's always at the right place.
I know. I honestly do have a lot of those. I don't know that I can say that happens to me all the time, that I would really piss people off, but honestly, I do find that when I am in that flow place and just say, things have a way of working out. I'm sure that I'll figure this out, kind of having that conversation and what am I feeling guided to do right now? Those things do work out. And I have gotten those upgrades to first class and things like that. Darn it. Yeah.
So the one thing that was amazed me when I listened to the podcast with Victor, there was a couple of stories that you told, and one of them was about the numbers.
Oh, yes. Oh, my
Could you
gosh.
tell that story? Because
Yes.
I just think that is just, and I think my listeners will find that excruciating.
Oh, it is. I know. And I'm a speaker, and whenever my husband goes with me, I have to say, Gary, I'm about to tell the story now. You can leave. It's like he hates hearing the story. So the story is that shortly after I got married, I woke up one morning and I had 6 numbers in my head, and I couldn't get them out of my head. I couldn't go back to sleep. And so I'm like, okay, there's 6 numbers. What the heck is this? And I had actually never played the lottery before. So I woke up my husband, who's snoring beside me, and I asked, honey, how many numbers are in the lottery? And he said 6. I'm like, okay, I've got 6 numbers. And I said, I think I may have the lottery number. I have never seen him move so fast before. He had a pad of paper. He had a pen. He was ready to write it down. And so he wrote the numbers down. It's a Wednesday morning. He said, I'm going to play these on the way to work this morning. He was all excited. I could hear the little voice in his head going, I married a psychic, and oh my gosh, we're going to win the lottery. So I put it out of my head. Friday morning rolls around, and we're reading the Boston Globe early in the morning and having our coffee. And I said, oh, we should see if my number came in. And he looked at me, he looked a little sheepish, and he said, oh gosh, I forgot to play it. I got really busy and I just slipped my mind. And so I'm thinking, oh well, the likelihood that I came up with a lottery number was slim to none. But just for curiosity, I looked in the paper, and I'm staring at the number, and I said, do you still have that slip of paper? And he said, yeah. And so I got the slip of paper, looked at the number in the newspaper, and I said, we won the lottery. But you didn't play it. And he said, how much is it for? And it was for $5.2 million, Paul. I know. And I'm still married to him, Paul. I have a long line of people that say, if you ever get that number again, please call me before you call your husband or talk to your husband. But I have not gotten that since. And believe me, do I sleep with a pad of paper beside my bed? Absolutely.
Well, I suspect that is the universe showing you didn't need it.
Well, I don't know about that, but I will, actually, to be really honest, the thing that really taught me was that when you get an intuitive impulse, it's really important to follow up on it. And so I took responsibility for that. That was probably the thing that allowed me to stay married too, because I was mad at him for so long. But I thought, it was the number that I got, and I should have played it. I should have taken action on it. So it was actually because a lot of us, on a less expensive level, a lot of us get intuitive guidance, and then we overrule it or think, oh, who am I to win the lottery, or I probably won't get that job. And again, we talk ourselves out of it. So intuition, you get more of it the more you act on it and that you pay attention to it. So I think it's important to act on those lottery numbers or otherwise.
And you said you actually advise people. So how does that work? Are we talking kind of very successful business people here come for you, or is this a bit more? Is this a bit more woo woo? I'm sorry, I don't know.
It's probably both. It's it's all over the map. Actually, it's I have people from all over the globe that I talk to. I have a lot of clients, in fact, in Japan and other parts of Asia, and they can range from really successful business people, physicians, lawyers, to us regular folks, and people really bring a whole lot of different questions. Sometimes it really is, I'm about to hire a new CEO or a new CFO or something, and what do you get about this person? it's like, so I'm the intuitive HR department to some people. And other people, it's just kind of tuning into relationships, or people who just feel like, wow, I'm so bored with my job, but I don't know what to do next, or I'm having a relationship issue. So it's all over the map. And I get things in images, feelings, words, pictures. That's how the information comes in for
So
me.
do you do the intuition for them, or are you helping them to identify their
You know,
own?
it's an interesting combination of both. I mean, when I do a reading, it's largely, people usually bring me questions or issues that they want me to address, or people they want me to tune into. And then I kind of close my eyes and I see what I get as general impressions. But some of it is, asking them questions, sometimes just asking people, what would you, really to think about what their ideal life would be like. Sometimes it's helping them learn to trust their own intuition. So I'm kind of guiding them on how their intuition is communicating with them about certain things, so that they've got a intuitive skill set that they leave the session with. So lots of different people. I mean, I just have similar to you, just talk to so many fascinating people and hear about so many occupations and issues that people have in life. And gosh, I think, we all have our struggles. And one of them is, what your podcast is about is kind of, how to find that calling, that thing that excites you, and how to find your passion. I mean, it's a biggie for a lot of people, which is why I'm glad you're doing this podcast.
Yes, it is a biggie. And I think the reason I set this up, as I said to you prior to us speaking, I set it up to find more meaning in life myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if people ask these questions of themselves, what am I passionate about? What is my success model?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's my next question for you. What is your success model? How do you define success for yourself?
It's really a day-to-day thing, and it's really about being grateful for what I have each day. I mean, I can't tell you that my life is perfect. I don't know that anybody's is, but I try to be really grateful for each of the things that I have, that, my good health, the roof overhead, that I've got friends. So I really try. It's like, if I can find those moments of joy in each day, I just figure the next day will repeat itself that way. And, it's like, to me, success is not an outside job of having X number of dollars a year, or the biggest and brightest car, or, the most fame, or anything like that. Honestly, I've had some of those things, and those are kind of empty successes. But if I can find those moments of joy each day and really find things to be grateful for, that to me is a successful day and a successful life. And to me, it's also maybe on a higher level, a more spiritual level, it's really about bringing kindness and compassion into the world. I mean, I guess because I've been doing this work for 30 years, I just have a bird's eye view of how much people suffer. I mean, you look at people walking down the street, and we probably make casual judgments about them and how happy they are or not, or some other judgment we make about them. And boy, when you have a window into what's going on in people's lives, you have no idea how much people suffer, whether they've got a child that's ill, or they lost a job, or they're worrying about, their bills, or their mom or their dad. It's like, oh my gosh, it's just like, sometimes we have a really hard time in this life. So part of my task, and I think part of how I define success, is just being able to bring some kindness and compassion into the world.
So in your life, are you a goal setter, or do you move towards something?
That's a good question. I would say I used to be a goal setter, and I used to be very driven. And I think I found that when I hit my early 50s, I just didn't want to do that anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. It just didn't feel good anymore. And so now, if it's a goal, it's more of a theme for my life. It might be a theme for the year. So sometimes I'll have, like, instead of a resolution for the year, I'll have like a word and or a phrase. And so this year, it's about embracing adventure and trying new things. And so if that's a goal, then that's it. But I don't find that it's a goal to have, a certain number of clients, or X number of speaking engagements, or a best-selling book. I don't know. That just feels like it doesn't fit for me anymore.
Yeah, I can understand
How
that
do
one.
most people answer that question? I'm going to interview you for a second here, Paul. I'm going to turn the tables on you. How would most people answer that question, do you think?
I have had a mixture of both on the podcast. Some people are very definitive goal setters.
Mm.
I think the overriding view coming forward at the moment seems to be not to be goal setting, but to be
Mm-hmm.
intention setting.
Yeah. Okay. That fits. Yeah. That's
It's
interesting.
kind of moving in the direction of a goal, but
Yeah.
not having a firm, solid goal.
Right.
And
Yeah. Because
certainly
I.
that's probably where I am. I have a lot
Mhm.
of trouble with goal setting.
Yeah.
I tried to set some goals for the beginning of this year, and I did kind of set them. And what I find from personally, I find when I set these goals, I've set a monetary goal for the end of March, and some other things around that. And I find the energy drains away. I
Yeah.
find aiming
Mm.
towards it, I just have no juice for it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I have a technique that I do every day. I mean, it's preceded by kind of thinking about what I want this year. And again, it feels more intention than goal. Um, and, and then I spend some time, I meditate for 10 or 15 minutes. And then I spend some time visualizing what I want. And I talk to myself in my head as if I already have it. And again, it's very general, like, oh, I'm really loving my new clients. I've got some wonderful speaking engagements lined up. I feel grateful for all the ways that I can serve. I mean, those are the ones I'm kind of saying to myself right now and here we are in early January. And then the intuitive piece and the technique comes in where before I open my eyes, I just ask myself, what 3 things could I do today to move in this happy new direction? And I just try to pay attention to what comes to me. And again, it's usually not something big like write a book or, something like that. It will come in, it might be write your blog about this week, this topic, or send an email, or, answer that request for an interview, or go have coffee with your friend, Cindy. It's like that. Those are the things that come to me. And again, where the intuition part comes in is if it feels light or it feels freeing or feels open, or I feel peaceful, those are the ones I move towards. If they feel like, oh, you want to balance your bank account today, then I
Hmm.
don't do it for that day. So it's kind of, that's how I follow my guidance. And it's followed by a self-talk of kind of what I said before. Things have a way of working out. I have a lucky life, or, I have an inspired life. And it's a belief also that the universe has my back, that things have a way of working out. And that if there's something that's in my heart, that it's like the universe or God, whatever word you want to choose there, puts it there. That I think that if you're excited about something or energized by something, your guidance, God, your higher self will help you achieve that desire.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is the thing, isn't it? I mean, in life, crap stuff happens to people,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But often out of the crapness, something good can come out of it.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that you said that, Paul, because it's something that I've observed having done this work for 30 years is that, so often somebody will contact me and they're going through some very big difficulty. I just had a woman that I talked to a few years ago that had breast cancer and, possible divorce through it. And, it was really a tough time. And then I heard back from her last month. Having not talked to her for a couple of years, and she'd gotten through the breast cancer. And she said, I don't want to sugarcoat this, but she, saying, a lot of things happened as the result of that breast cancer that really opened her life. And she said, she really got a lot of support. She was able to, actually, she ended up meeting somebody new that had been incredibly supportive. She found some wonderful new friends, and out of it, she got a lot of newfound confidence. So I do find that sometimes when very difficult things happen to us, if we can stay open to it, it may lead us to a better place. And I always hate saying that because I don't want to sound so Pollyanna-ish that it doesn't, takes away from, because we suffer through these things, and I
We
don't
do
want to
suffer.
sugarcoat it. We
No,
do.
we
And I
do. We
just,
do suffer. That's true.
yeah,
And
yeah.
going through the pain of something is not nice.
Yeah, and I can certainly be a little bit too Pollyanna-ish. I think that's probably one of my weaknesses. And I even find that when I'm going through a difficult time, sometimes I'm like, oh, well, look on the bright side of things. And it's like sometimes you just need to be with the pain of something, and that, sometimes it just sucks, excuse me, but
No, it
and
does.
it's really very difficult. And life is tough. Who was it? Oh gosh, he wrote The Road Less Traveled. I can't think of his name.
Scott
Scott,
Peck.
yes. And he started the book by was it Life is Difficult and Then You Die?
Yes.
And
Yes,
I
absolutely.
thought, oh my gosh, that sounds so awful. But, there are times that life is difficult. And I do find that, when we read some of these self-help books, it just makes like, do my 5 easy steps and you too will be back on the path. And, there's sometimes where we go for months, years sometimes, with a great deal of suffering. And I think it is part of life. But I always find that there's something that you can find that brings you a little light and a little joy throughout that coexists with the suffering at times. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I wrote a book a few years ago called Listen, and the subtitle was Trusting Your Inner Voice in Times of Crisis. And I interviewed a lot of people for the book, and that kind of shared with me, how they got through those times of change and crisis. And it was really quite fascinating to get an opening into people's lives about how they struggled through those things. And interestingly, a lot of it was self-talk. The phrase I heard so often is "This too shall pass," because
Mm.
most of these difficult times are not, permanent. They do change. We do grow. We get strong in the broken places. And, a lot of it was really about trusting their own guidance to lead them out to a different place. And, we emerge in a different place. Somebody wrote a book another title that I loved. There's a phrase called, when one door shuts, another opens.
Opens.
But the book was called Hell in the Hallway. Which you get it right there. It's like sometimes you stay in that hallway for a while between the shut door and the open door.
So one thing I wanted to ask you, because it was actually one of the questions that you said, one of your prepared questions, which you said I could ask you about, is how does someone, if they would like to bring more intuition into their life, how do they go about doing it?
Well, the first thing I would do is think about some of the decisions you've made in your own life and in the past, and think about how your intuition may have guided you before. So did you hear an inner voice that told you what to do that you may have ignored or not, or paid attention to? Did you get a feeling about something? Did you get an aha moment? Did you have a dream about it? So think back at some of those times. And then if that doesn't conjure up anything, think about a decision that you're making now. And I would suggest something that doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily a big decision, like should I get divorced or married or something like that, but maybe just a smaller decision, and start to pay attention to all the ways that your intuition might communicate an answer to you. So again, it would be a feeling about something, oh, I feel good about this, or I feel that, very simply. You might get a physical sensation. Now the gut feeling in your stomach is one of the big ones, but sometimes people get a feeling of openness, or there are chills. It's a good, if it's a good decision, they might get, like somebody called them goosebumps or God bumps. I thought that was kind of interesting. You might get a dream that warns you away from something or towards something. Often if you close your eyes and you say, I'd like information about this decision, you might get a symbolic picture, a stop sign or an X through your choice or something like that. So again, it's very individual, but I like asking my intuition questions also. I like asking open-ended questions, so not things that evoke a yes or no answer, but it might be, what do I need to know about this new job? Or what do I need to know about my life purpose? You can simply say it as a comment too. You could just say, a statement, I would like information about my calling or my purpose or my next steps. And again, to repeat what I said before, you don't usually get the answer right away. I often find that you get it throughout the day. You might get drawn to a magazine article or hear this podcast or have a conversation with a friend that answers the question, or an aha moment might come in, or you might have that dream, and I like to keep a little journal. So I kind of jot down answers as they come in throughout the day. An interesting technique too is I gave a talk to a group of engineers a few years ago, and this one guy came up to me after the class and he said, how engineers are always known for their pocket protectors? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I keep an intuition card in there. And he pulled out of his pocket a little 3x5 card. And he said, every day I write a question on it. And his was like something like, how can we produce more widgets for our factory or something like that. And he said, throughout the day, I'll get answers, through all those ways that I just described. And he said, at the end of the day, and it was at the end of the day that he showed me, he had all these little cryptic notes on it about the answer to his question. So I thought that was a fantastic technique. I thought that was, so I kind of use that in my own way, and my just jotting down notes on my iPhone.
It's funny. I use intuition. I call myself, I don't call it intuition. I call it flow. So when my life is flowing, things happen around me in the right time.
Yes.
And it's simple things like Sunday was an example. I got up on Sunday, and I'm a runner, so I like to get some running in at some point. And because it's quite dark in the mornings here in Scotland this time of year, I don't like to run in the mornings. But I got up and I thought, no, I'm going to run early today. And I got up and I need to run early today. And I got up out and I ran early. And it was just dawn was approaching. It was not that late. It was about 8 o'clock-ish of that. And when I got back, it started to rain. I mean, I'm seriously rain. I got back, before the rain hit. And had I made a decision not to go that time, I would have been wet or not run at all that day.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yep. I love that. And it's like it didn't necessarily come in this big booming voice. You just kind of had the answer.
And I get that a lot.
Yeah.
Loads of things like that one.
It's interesting. My best friend is from Scotland. She lives here in the United States now, but she grew up in very rural Scotland on a farm. And she said that they always used their intuition. She said it was about, sometimes her father would know when one of the, animals were sick and what to do. But the story that she told me that was so fascinating was, she said often her mother would wake up in the morning and have a big pot of stew and hand it to my friend Laura and say, go bring this to Mrs. McGillicuddy down the road because she needs it. And Laura would bring it down and find out that Mrs. McGillicuddy had just, fallen ill and needed some food. And she said it just was such a natural way to be in the flow. As you said, it's like kind of a very natural rhythm of life that you just know these things. And I think we've very much gotten out of the habit of listening to it or being in the flow of it in our crazy high technology, go culture. I mean, I think intuition does require one to be tuned into it and be on the beam of it.
Have you ever explored how it works or why it works?
I really don't know. It's people ask me that a lot. I mean, there's a more of a left-brained answer to that Malcolm Gladwell wrote in his book Blink, and his theory is that we all have a lot of subconscious knowledge, and that when we're faced with making a decision about something, we bring a lot of that past knowledge to the surface that doesn't seem like it's something logical or rational. I really honestly, I think that's true. And I also ascribe to the idea that it really is a natural, inborn, primal thing that we all share. I mean, I think in the very, original stages of it, it probably was there to lead us towards water, away from danger, towards food, to keep us safe. And so as we've, in our evolutionary cycle, I think that it can really help us make good decisions about our lives.
I have a sense of it, and it comes from in particle physics and that physics of the very small. There is a particle that they can separate, or a pair of particles called quarks, and they always come in pairs, and these things have a spin. So one will be spinning in one direction and one will be spinning in the other. And what you can do with quarks is you can separate them. You can actually take them down different routes. But they are paired, they are linked somehow. So if you then expose it to a magnetic field, one of them, it will change direction. And the other one will simultaneously change direction, even though they're no longer connected or no longer close to each other. Now, the implication to me of that one is that a quark actually is a subatomic particle, but it actually exists in multiple dimensions. And the only place we can see it, we see 2 points on the surface of a ring. And if you imagine a ring spinning in one direction, if you look at 2 points on it, one is going down and one is going up. You look at 2 opposite points of the ring, one will be traveling up. Yeah. So if you then flipped one over, the ring has just changed direction. And if the ring was stretchy, you could separate the 2 points without realizing that the ring would just stretch to the 2 points. Now, if that is a multi-dimensional item and that's a piece of actual matter, it means we all have that in us. We are all multi-dimensional. And that is where intuition would come from. It would be the crossing of the interdimensions, the fact that we have an interdimensional component to ourselves without being aware of it.
Oh, interesting. That makes sense to me.
I'd love to someone to explore that, but I put it out there.
Yeah. And I don't know that I can quite speak that language, but I kind of get it as you're saying it. It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, when I feel like I'm tuning in to someone or something, I feel like I'm kind of reaching into an outer dimension. I mean, the only way that I can think of as a down to earth explanation of it is I feel like I'm tuning in. I'm going to use an old fashioned radio here as an example. I'm dating myself, but I'm tuning into the frequency of that person or that situation.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like. So if I'm, got you, Paul, as a client, and I'm just saying, Paul, what's Paul's next step or what's going on with Paul? It's like I'm tuning into the frequency of Paul and downloading the information. That's kind of how it feels to me. Yeah,
it's a fascinating conversation, and I think my listeners will find it unusual from my usual conversations. I wanted to have something different on the program.
Oh, good. Well, I hope to make it different and intriguing and mind bending here.
So, we're reaching kind of that point in the program where I ask my guests, is there a question that I haven't asked you? So is there something that I didn't ask you that I should have done?
It's funny. I just feel compelled to tell you, I feel like you found part of your calling by doing these interviews, because you're really good at it. You really ask great open-ended questions, and you have this natural curiosity, and you're very open-minded. So I just am grateful that you're doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm grateful I'm doing it too, because I just love doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it funny, because obviously you enjoy doing it, and I bet there's a vast number of people who love listening to it but wouldn't enjoy doing it. So you've in fact found part of the thing that you're excited about and makes you feel peaceful. So I think that's what our task is in life, trying to find all those things that do make us happy and excited.
My purpose in life is moving people forward in whatever their path might be.
Wow. What's interesting, Paul, is that a lot of people ask me about their life purpose, and I think often the expectation is that my answer will be a certain job. Oh, yes, you should be a radio or a podcast interviewer, whatever. And this always sounds like a cop-out on my part, but it's honestly how I get the information. Is the information comes through very similar to what you just said. It's like it's a lot broader, and that would be similar to mine. I feel like my task is to inspire people, motivate people, help people dream and think bigger, and also to give them an action plan. Now, under that category, I could be a school psychologist, I could be a psychiatrist, I could be a coach, I could be a whole bunch of different things. But so I think we have a lot of free will in terms of what we choose. And so this is obviously part of what you've chosen and part of what I've chosen. But I think we have a lot of latitude in those areas.
It was explained on another podcast I was hearing today, and I thought it was a lovely explanation. So we all have one purpose in life. We're not multi-purpose tools.
Mm-hmm.
But the why we do them and how we explore them is entirely up to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, it's about moving people forward. So if I'm standing in a checkout queue, I will move the checkout person forward in some way. I'll ask them how their day's going, and I'll give them something, something positive.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah.
And I find myself doing this all the time. And it's interesting because it was, it must have been about 8 or 9 years ago. I was here, it was actually 2010, because it was very, very snowy here. We had so much snow everywhere, and I was with a friend at the time, and we were doing cross coaching with each other, and she asked me that question, what's my life purpose? And it came just out of the blue. I didn't actually think about, my purpose is to move people forward.
Oh,
and she said that was very clear, and I said yes, it was, isn't it? And we continued our coaching, and I left.
Yeah.
And I walked out of her flat and into the car park area, and there was a lady stuck in the snow, and I physically moved her car forward.
The universe said yes to your statement.
The universe said, there you go, you got it right. Hang on.
Oh, I love that. Because I think so often when we're really on the right track, we get those weird little synchronicities that kind of show up for us. So I think you got yours with a lady stuck in the snow. That's
Yeah.
so funny. I love it. I think the universe has a sense of humor.
So what is it? How, if someone wants to get in touch with you or work with you, what's the process? What do you do for people, and how could they get involved?
Yeah, well, I do all of my work by phone and Skype. So,
Hmm.
yeah, from people from all over. And my website is lynnrobinson.com. And
Okay,
my first name is
there will be links for that, so it's fine.
okay, yeah, Lynn. And I have a intuition newsletter that's filled with lots of techniques that people can sign up for, and ebook downloads and quizzes and lots of videos on my site to learn how to do all of this stuff. So lots of practical things.
Oh, that's lovely. That's great.
Yeah,
So I'll make sure those links are available on the website so
great.
people can get
Thank
to
you.
you. So now we get to our last question, which I think you've probably hinted at it already. So yeah, we arrive on this planet and we grow up. We have the children. We are children. We play. We become adults. We do the whole process, and of course, at some point, we then leave. So we are animals on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the purpose? Why are we here? What is the meaning of life for you?
I think it's really to grow, to change, to have courage, to try new things, to bring as much joy into our lives and the lives of others.
That's simple enough.
Yep, that would be my answer. Yeah.
Nothing complicated in that then.
No, I didn't want to make it be complicated, because I think sometimes we overcomplicate these things. I mean, yeah, you could make that complicated, but no, I think that's my version of it.
And do you find that easy to live for yourself?
I say that I do now. I'm now in my mid-60s. I find that it's so much easier to live life that way than it was when I was in my 20s and 30s and doing all that struggling and goal setting and pushing against. So I find it much easier now. And I do try to live my life that way. Do I have setbacks and detours and days when that doesn't feel like a very good intention? Yes, I do. But more often than not, I find that I do live that way.
No, that's good.
I like being in the flow. Yeah.
Well, Lynn Robinson, thank you so much for your time today. It's been lovely to talk to you.
It's been enjoyable talking to you too. Take care.
I think I might check back in with you sometime and see how things are going.
Okay, good. All right.
All the best. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
That was Life, Passion and Business with Paul Harvey and my guest, Lynn Robinson. As ever, the details to connect with Lynn can be found at the website lifepassionandbusiness.com beneath the podcast episode. So how did your January go? Did you set some goals, or are you working with intentions? If you've listened to the 50th show, you would have heard Simon Jordan and Susie Beaumont talk about the way they now are looking at goals in their life. It's about approaching them in the right way. For some people, the big hairy ass goal, the BHAG, is what they need to do. It really works for them. For others, that just does not work. The big goal becomes too restrictive, or if you're like me, it becomes a stick to beat myself up with when I do not achieve it in the time frame I've set. I have said my solution has been to move towards a more inclusive approach. I'm using intuition to guide my progress. And that's very much why the conversation with Lynn was so appropriate this week. However, even working with intuition, there still needs to be something that you focus on. We need to get stuff done without using the G word maybe, but getting stuff done involves planning. It involves a strategy, an approach, and most of all, it involves execution. Now, I've been in business 20 years and I've noticed from my marketing clients that good intention is not good enough. It takes velocity of action to make a difference and get results. Because you see, driving a project with willpower alone is just insufficient. So for years, I've used the process with my marketing clients to help them stay focused and be held accountable. It was a technique that I learned in my coach training, and I never really gave it a name with the clients. They would not even know they're being coached. I've decided to take that model and see if it stands up alone. Now at the moment I'm calling it turbo coaching, and it takes about 20 minutes. And I would like to test it outside of the context of marketing, and I want to offer it as a standalone service to the life, passion and business community. and for a short time there will be a free option. If you want to move forward towards intentions, if you want to set some goals, if you want to get stuff done by using accountability, check out the What's on Offer tab at the website. There you will find out more about Turbo Coaching and how you could get access to it for free in return for some feedback. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the program. Just need to say I appreciate your time and attention. So thanks for listening, and I will catch you next time.